Toshio, he's literally killed hundreds of people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, one time when Toshio says that, it's like right after we see Gammera kill a bunch of people with like a death ray and like light them on fire. It's like, oh, kid, he's not as great as you think he is, but I guess I understand it.
Hello and welcome to Camp Kaiju Monster Movie Podcast. We are your hosts, Vincent Hannum
And Matt Levine.
And we're talking about all of our favorite monster movies, the good, the bad, and the downright campy, and asking if they stand the test of time.
Traditional kaiju, creature features, space invaders, the supernatural, and everything in between. All strange beasts welcome here.
Camp Kaiju is sponsored by Zach Linder and the Zach Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty, your source for real estate, home rehab, fixing and flipping for investor clients and residential buyers. Reach out to the Zach Pack today for real estate services. Follow the Zach Pack on social media and contact the Zach Pack for investment opportunities. Links in the show notes, everybody.
Pounding across the motion picture screen comes the most terrifying monster of them all. Gammera, the Invincible. Gammera, the super monster that even the H-bomb cannot destroy. Gammera, the Invincible.
Attention, everyone! Take cover!
Gammera, consuming raw atomic power. Power to destroy entire cities.
Open fire!
Man's most destructive weapons have no effect on Gammera, the Invincible. The mightiest nuclear weapons ever devised are powerless against Gammera, the Invincible. Is humanity doomed? Will the world be destroyed? The United Nations is called to emergency session in a last desperate effort to save the world.
We have one plan that we think might work. We have discussed Plan Z with the Japanese authorities, and they agree it is the best of our alternative plans. Is that correct, sir?
That is so. Plan Z is hope of the world.
A cast of thousands at the mercy of the most terrifying monster that ever lived. Brian Donlevy as General Arnold.
Is beyond comprehension. He must be stopped now.
Albert Decker as the Secretary of Defense. Will Plan Z stop Gammera? Gammera, the Invincible.
Matt, here we are, rocking and rolling with Camp Kaiju. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you, Vincent?
I'm pretty good. For everybody who doesn't know, I'm a public school teacher, and summer is 2 weeks away. And actually, when this episode drops May 31st, 1 week away. So even better.
Cause for celebration, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about the Wolves last night, Timberwolves.
Yeah, it was a bad game. You know, we lost the first game of the Warriors series as well, and then we went on to win 4 in a row. So I'm hoping we can turn it around, but the Thunder are a really great team. It's going to be a tough challenge. The Pacers and Knicks are playing tonight as well as we record this episode, so I'm making a sacrifice for Camp Kaiju, but I'm very happy to be here talking about Gammera from 1965.
Well, thank you for your time.
I'm just kidding. It's not that big of a sacrifice. I'm always, Camp Kaiju is more important than basketball, but maybe not more important than the Timberwolves. If the Wolves were playing tonight, it might be different. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about this movie.
Well, yeah. I mean, hey, look, folks listening, me and Matt, we live in Minneapolis. If we could get a championship parade, that's all I want. That would just be awesome.
Absolutely. And I feel like Minnesota sports fans, whether you love the Twins or the Vikings or the Lynx or, the Aurora, all the different teams up here, I feel like Minnesota sports fans know heartache very well. So we just want one championship. It's not too much to ask.
Just one. Well, maybe it won't take 60 years, but it has been 60 years since Gammera the Giant Monster graced the silver screen. One of the big kaiju. I think in many iterations, Gammera does rival Godzilla in terms of popularity and franchise output. I mean, I think there are 12 movies in the Gammera series, which is a lot. They're not all masterpieces, but it starts with Gammera, the giant monster, from 1965, Daiei Studios. I'm very excited to talk about this movie, but we'll go through some nuts and bolts. We have some news since last time we'll get into. We'll talk about some upcoming releases, both out in the general public and on Camp Kaiju. Summer is upon us, folks, so we have some exciting things. And we'll thank our patrons, of course, take you through the production history and cast and crew of Gammera, give it our final rating, and then, I don't know, go have a beer and watch some basketball. Who knows?
Yeah, totally. And then get ready for work tomorrow and do it all over. Sorry,
Wow.
Don't mean to be a downer.
That's all right. Have a beer, go to work. That's what you should do, right?
So it goes. Yeah. Yep. Indeed. Until then, we have a great night of film conversation ahead of us.
I honestly look forward to this every couple of weeks.
Totally. Me too.
And then I get to relive our conversation for like the next week as I'm editing the audio. And I know I had strong feelings about Species, but, you know, listening to our episode, I would watch this movie again with the right group of people. I think it could be a lot of fun as a group activity.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I just want to say you always do such an amazing job of editing the episodes. I mean, that, you know, Vincent takes on that work here on Camp Kaiju, obviously, and thank you for doing that. I've said that privately a lot, but I just want to say it on the recording as well. You do a great job. Thank you for that. And it is fun to like revisit our conversations and like the actual episodes, and like some of the stuff is like, I can't believe I said that. I probably could have sounded a little more intelligent at times, but it is a lot of fun. And on the subject of Species, I sort of liked the first one, and a couple days ago I watched Species 2, kind of hoping that the sequels would be like fun and trashy and like entertaining. It turns out the second one is just really bad, so I'm probably not going to continue with those, but
okay.
I had my hopes up. Maybe I'll try one more and see how Species 3 goes, but I don't have very high hopes.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing that work. Someone had to do it.
Exactly. Yep. Another sacrifice I make for Camp Kaiju.
Well, thank you all to our listeners. We have some things lined up for you this summer. We want to just, with our nuts and bolts, first and foremost, shout out our patrons. Jason, Chris, Sean, Peggy, our anonymous patron. We appreciate all the support, and you all on Patreon, and anyone else just listening out there. Please rate and review Camp Kaiju. It really helps us a lot. You can send us listener comments a number of ways. campkaiju@gmail.com might be the easiest way, but you can find us on Instagram at camp_kaiju_podcast. And if you'd like to even be a featured voice on the show, you can leave a voicemail at 612-470-2612. Tell us about your favorite monster movies, your history with Gammera, and right now for the 50th anniversary of Jaws this summer, we are hoping to collect a number of voicemails from you listeners, just telling us about if you love Jaws, why you love Jaws, your formative moments. Do you still have nightmares? I know I do, and all those kind of fun things. So please don't hesitate. Give us a call. Talk to us about Jaws. And while you're at it, you can check out our website, campkaijupodcast.com, for more reviews and special content. You can find some merch at campkaiju.threadless.com. And I think the best place to go, honestly, is Patreon. You can join a cool club over at patreon.com/campkaiju. And we got giveaways, priority comments, discounts, maybe some live events.
Excited for sure.
A couple of exciting things I really want to talk about since last time. A lot's happened in 2 weeks. Number one, there's news with the next Godzilla Kong movie. It has an official title now. It's called Godzilla X Kong Supernova. And it's currently in production, slated for a May 2027 release. Might be March, but 2027.
Seems like a May, like early summer kind of movie.
True. So the kaiju sphere is abuzz with this title because Supernova alludes seemingly to an outer space theme, a cosmic threat. And there are two antagonists kind of bubbling to the surface that fans are looking out for. One, Space Godzilla, who's only appeared in one Godzilla movie before, Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, or Gigan, which is a very formidable foe from Godzilla versus Gigan from the 70s.
Man, I have to admit, I'm not very familiar with either of those nemeses. I gotta watch those movies for sure.
They are, in my opinion, not the best Godzilla movies, but the villains stand out above their respective films, if that makes sense.
I could see that. Isn't there like a sea monster from Terror of Mechagodzilla? I can't remember the name of that monster.
Yeah, that is Titanosaurus.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. That's another example of a movie that I don't think is all that great, but that monster is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Camp Kaiju listeners, we will keep you abreast of events as they unfold.
Exciting.
Yeah. Other exciting news. This is totally random. So, Matt, there is an award. It's called the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards. And there's a really great community.
Like a message board?
Yeah.
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 I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah. So the Classic Horror Film Board, it's a great website, just people chatting about all sorts of different topics. But anyways, decades ago, they sponsored an award called the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards. And it honors works in the horror genre in all sorts of mediums, from podcasts to writers in the field and reviewers and even movies. So I happened to see that we had been nominated, and it's like a very open nomination process. Somebody or more than one person nominated our podcast for this award. And I was very appreciative of that and surprised. And we are in great company in the category for best podcast / multimedia. You might recognize friends of the pod, Bill and Tom from the Frankenstein Minute podcast. They were actually given an honorable mention, well-deserved, to those guys. And then Derek M. Cook at what's now called Bride of Monster Kid Radio. He and I have collaborated on his show talking about Jack Arnold movies. So really, really esteemed company, I think, in the horror film podcast community. So congratulations, Matt. We did it.
Congratulations, Vincent. That's awesome news. Thanks to whoever nominated us. And yeah, it's just cool to be part of that community, like along with those fellow nominees. That's pretty awesome. And feels good to just know there's an audience out there and like share ideas and, nerd out about this stuff. So it's pretty cool for sure.
Yeah, honestly, I feel the same way. It's just like, people do listen and people do find value in what we're talking about. And I think we would just do it regardless, but it does help. And it is a nice feeling to be in conversation with listeners. So yeah, we salute you all out there.
For sure. Thank you.
All right. This month in monster movie history, it's still May. As of this, we're going to drop May 31st. Mm-hmm. So any titles on here capture your imagination?
Oh man, to be honest, I haven't seen a lot of these, and the few that I have seen, I think I talked about last time, because I mentioned Horror of Dracula, the Hammer horror picture, which is a lot of fun. I think I mentioned that last time. Dog Soldiers, I think I talked about last time. Maybe I'll just shout out The Mummy Returns. I know it's kind of obvious, but it's a fun sequel from the early 2000s, a throwback to like the Saturday matinee style of like adventure horror movie. Yeah, it's fun. I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't know if it holds up, but I've kind of been wanting to rewatch those movies. So The Mummy Returns, maybe it's time for another watch.
Do it. It's totally worth it. Yeah.
Love that cast.
Love the cast. I love the continuation of the story. Go for it.
I do remember like a really obnoxious kid in that movie, which maybe is a good like segue to Gammera. I'm sure we'll be talking about that a little bit later tonight as well. So, it's a running theme perhaps for the night. Annoying kids in movies.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think Toshio was a very well fleshed out character with strong motivations for putting himself in all sorts of danger.
Yeah, he does love turtles. That's a strong motivation for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have fun tonight. Well, in May of 1961, I want to shout out Conga. Conga is a British film, I believe. And if you could guess by the title, it is a riff on I don't know if it's Kong exactly, but it is about a giant ape that rampages through London. It's been on my watch list for a long time. We'll get to it at some point. But Conga from 1961.
I haven't seen that. I do also like The Black Cat. I haven't seen that in a very long time as well, but that came out in 1934. I remember that being like a really fun, atmospheric, very short. I think it's Universal. I could be wrong about that. But Karloff and Lugosi, that's a great movie as well, from what I remember.
Oh, absolutely. Pre-Code.
Yep.
Has some great horror visuals in that movie for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Atmospheric.
Oh, so atmospheric. So coming up this summer, there's a lot of monster news. I'm only picking one, but we have 2 Predator installments coming out this year.
I was aware of one of these. I didn't know that both of them were coming out, though.
Yeah, so which one were you aware of?
I was aware of Badlands, and I've seen the trailer for that. It looks pretty cool, but I was not aware of the other one.
Yeah, so Badlands comes out November 7th, and then Predator Killer of Killers is actually an animated film series directed by
Dan Trachtenberg, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not always the biggest fan of animating a legacy series, but you know, it still could be a cool way to see the Predator in action in different scenarios.
Yeah, intriguing. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm sold on the premise either, but I'll definitely watch it. And hopefully I'll be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I mean, the Predator is awesome. I'll watch anything with that species. I don't know. It's not one person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, like, I do generally like animation. It's hard to imagine that being brought to, like, the Predator franchise, but it could work. I'm excited.
Yeah. But also exciting coming up on Camp Kaiju on this podcast, we have your pick. And what is that?
Yeah, next up on Camp Kaiju, we're going to be talking about Swamp Thing from 1982 by Wes Craven, which honestly is a movie I know almost nothing about. Like, I know it's a very famous comic book series, which I never really got into as a kid, but I know it's very popular. Wes Craven, of course, is a great horror director, maybe a little bit uneven, but has some really great stuff. So I don't know what to expect. I'm really excited to talk about that.
Likewise. And then after that, we're going to talk about giant robots in a cult classic called Robot Jox from 1989. It's directed by Stuart Gordon, whose Reanimator I absolutely love and is another classic. So Stuart Gordon knows what he's doing. And on that episode, we hope to have 1 or 2 guest hosts. Returning is Sean Pryor, who helped us break down... Ooh, what did he help us on? Oh, hi. No, Sean's last episode was him talking about his great book called Kaiju Unleashed, which is an illustrated reference book for kaiju in cinema. I actually have it open right now looking at his info on Gammera.
Oh, nice. Such a cool book and such a great conversation. That was a very fun episode and interview with him.
Yeah, so please, listeners, go back to that in prep for Robot Jox, and if we can, Sean Childers, who brought Tusk to our show. We're hoping to have him on the show as well for Robot Jox.
Awesome. The 2 Seans.
Yeah, I know.
That'll be fun. Can't wait.
Yeah. And then the final film to round out the first half of 2025.
Wow, I didn't realize it was the last episode of the first part of the season, but The Company of Wolves by Neil Jordan is the next movie that I'll be bringing to the podcast, which I've been wanting to see for like 20 years now. It looks so surreal and like fantastic and dreamlike. Beyond that, again, I don't really know too much about it. I know there are some like themes about like coming of age and female sexuality and stuff like that. That'll be a great conversation. Looking forward to that.
Definitely. And then that'll take us into July. And we'll bring you some traditional kaiju, everybody, for Kaiju July. Those titles are TBD. Matt, we're going to talk about those at some point and announce the second half of 2025 at some point.
Can't wait.
But all of a sudden, I feel like we just did this. Like we just came up with 12 films and here we are again.
Yeah, time flies, man. Obviously, in the best possible way. It's so much fun watching these movies and talking about them. And I also wanted to mention, like, earlier when you were talking, I can't believe that Gammera the Giant Monster came out in 1965 and Jaws came out in 1975. So those movies are only 10 years apart, but they don't feel like it. Like, to me, Gammera feels like it's part of like the old school classic, like, early 20th century, even though it's not actually early 20th century. And then Jaws kind of feels like it like kicked off like the modern blockbuster era a little bit. So I was just thinking, like, it's amazing those movies came out 10 years apart and they seem to belong to totally different eras of filmmaking,
100%. Because you think about 10 years ago from now, I feel like movie making is still the same. A movie from 2015 and 2025 I don't think are as far apart as Gammera and Jaws.
It definitely doesn't feel like it. Maybe in the future, like 2015 will feel radically different from 2025, but right now it doesn't. So I don't know. It's cool to step back and look at it like that.
Wild.
Yeah.
Well, what's your personal history with Gammera then?
So I watched the original Japanese version, Gamera the Giant Monster, relatively recently, maybe like a year and a half ago, and liked it quite a bit. I, kind of thought it was just going to be a Godzilla ripoff, which it kind of is in some ways, but it's like a very good, charming, imaginative one, and I liked it quite a bit. And then to prepare for the recording tonight, I watched the American version, Gammera the Invincible, Gammera spelled with 2 M's, and I'm sure I'll be talking more about this tonight. The American version is terrible. I really hate it. I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but it's just awful. And I'll explain why a little bit later on tonight. But I couldn't believe the disparity in quality between the Japanese and the American versions. And then I rewatched part of the Japanese version just like a couple hours ago before the recording tonight. So, tried to remind myself why I like the Japanese one so much, because the American one pales in comparison. So anybody out there who hasn't seen these movies, or even if you have, share your thoughts. Maybe you like the American one more than the Japanese one. That's totally cool. But for me, I was just surprised how vastly different the two versions were.
I'm going to ask you more about that in a little bit when we get to the release and legacy of this film.
Mm-hmm.
The last time we talked about Gammera, we've talked about Gammera twice on the podcast. The first time was Gammera versus Gauss from the 60s, which I think is the third entry in the series. So we completely skipped the first two. And then we went to the Heisei era and talked about Gammera Guardian of the Universe, which the quality of those films versus the original Showa era are just radically different. Mm-hmm. Not for better or for worse, just a product of the times. But I definitely wanted to get back to basics with the first Gammera, fill that blind spot. But I've been aware of Gammera my whole life. I remember being quite young, maybe 4 or 5. And me and my family, we lived in a small town for a little bit in North Carolina. And these are like some of my earliest memories. Like, try to think about your earliest memories. And mine are going into like a 1-room video rental store and looking for Gammera movies.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
About how old were you? Maybe like 5? Around?
Probably about 5. No older than 5. Because I know when we lived in that town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. And I guess this small, and we were like in the boonies of Appalachia, North Carolina. But I guess this rental store had Gammera movies. Go figure.
I love that story. It reminds me, my grandma had a cottage in Montello, Wisconsin, a very small town in the middle of nowhere. And there was a similar video store that was like one room. And like some of my earliest, fondest like movie watching memories were going in there and picking a movie for the night and then watching it with the family. Not too many monster movies, but like, some old horror movies. Bride of Frankenstein, I think I saw back then for the first time. So I can relate to the nostalgia of that experience.
Very cool. Yeah, I just think watching these movies young, that's when it really sinks its hooks into you.
Yeah, it sets you on a path for life,
Yeah, and then, I went away from these movies for a long time. I did not get back into kaiju films until my late 20s. I was just like, it just wasn't what I was into. I was into, quote, high art cinema.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
Right.
But now I'm like, this stuff's awesome. This is what I want to watch all the time. Although I will say, and I'm going off on a tangent, I have my Oscar movies and art house films too.
Yeah, totally. I've always felt that like movies can offer many different kinds of pleasure. They obviously are great art. They like, some masterpieces of cinema are like some of the best artworks you will ever experience in your life. And they can also provide entertainment and like shocking thrills and like, that it can like bring you back to childhood. And like, I think you need both. As a movie fan, you need to have a diet of both kinds of movies, I think.
Impossible, unbelievable, fantastic. But I tell you, it could happen. It could happen. It could happen. It could happen.
Yes, it could happen. For various authorities believe that buried somewhere under the polar ice cap, in a state of suspended animation, are the awesome creatures, the leviathans that roamed the earth at the dawn of time. And under certain conditions, a nuclear explosion can free one from his icy tomb. Then, guided by instinct, the beast would come back to the caverns of the deepest Atlantic where it was spawned. An armored giant, wreaking his prehistoric fury on modern man and his puny machines. Cities would be terrorized by the cruel intruder from the past. Populations crazed and panicked with fear by its destructive force. Granite and steel would crumble. Soldiers and their weapons would be powerless before the onslaught of the beast. The beast. The beast. The beast from 20,000 fathoms.
Herald Square, 34th Street, Broadway. Every section of the city is guarded. No one knows where the monster will strike next.
Godzilla, king of the monsters. Alive, surging up from the depths of the sea on a tidal wave of terror to wreak vengeance on mankind.
Godzilla, king of the monsters. It's alive.
A gigantic beast,
Stalking the earth, crushing all before it.
in a cyclonic cavalcade of electrifying horror.
Raging through the streets on a rampage of total destruction.
Godzilla, king of the monsters.
Incredible titan of terror.
Wiping out a city of 6 million in a holocaust of flame.
Jet planes cannot destroy it.
Bombs cannot kill it.
All modern weapons fail.
Is this the end of our civilization?
Can the scientists of the world find a way to stop this creature?
Or the answer, see Godzilla, king of the monsters.
You may wish to deny it, but your eyes tell you it's true.
A tale to stun the mind.
More fantastic than any ever written by Jules Verne.
More terrifying than any ever shown on the screen.
Awesome.
Incredible.
Unbelievable.
A story beyond your wildest dreams.
Dynamic violence.
Savage action.
Spectacular thrill.
Godzilla, king of the monsters.
Fantastic beyond comprehension.
Gripping beyond compare.
Astounding beyond belief.
The mightiest monster of them all.
See Godzilla, king of the monsters.
From beyond the universe, an invader who plans to conquer the entire cosmos begins an attack on Earth. mystifying and terrifying events, and from outer space, the age of the monster begins. The Earth is in danger. Who can save the Earth?
Oh, Gammera! He will save us?
Gammera, super monster fighting savagely for justice against evil. Mache Fumiaka, a spacewoman whose task is to defend the Earth, helped by the most powerful monster of all time, A space battleship and the Galaxy Express train never before seen in science fiction movies. See Super Monster, a space movie on a gigantic scale. Packed with stunning effects. Super Monster, the most riveting film in the history of motion pictures. Who will win, Gammera or the enemies of the Earth?
Well, then let's just dive into Gammera here with the production history. We'll start with the select crew and the select cast. Well, the director of Gammera is Noriaki Yuasa, and he actually directed all but one of the subsequent Gammera films of the Showa era. The one he did not direct was Gammera vs. Barugan, which was a sequel to this one, but Yuasa did the special effects for it. So he was involved from the first picture to the last in this series, which was Gammera Super Monster from 1980. In the 1970s, Yuasa moved into directing TV dramas. And I'll add, Gammera was his first real feature film. He was born in 1933, so he's about 32 when he directed this movie. He was born in Tokyo. His family was in showbiz, and I pulled this following information from an interview I found with him from 1996, and I'll include that link in our show notes. But like growing up in show business, he was exposed to, quote, illicit affairs, which is interesting because that led him, as he states, to never direct a romantic film, which I included because I did not find the ostensible romance in Gammera to be very convincing.
No, not at all.
So I was like, oh, maybe he just wasn't interested in that angle of the movie.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, like the movie, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but like it has like a childlike quality to it. You know, I mean, the character of Toshi, right? Is that the kid's name?
Toshio.
Oh. Toshio, sorry. You know, obviously that's the main example, but even like all the other relationships seem like little kids playing on a playground or something. So unromantic is a good way to put it. I kind of felt the same way.
Yeah. And you know, you also found this. I just found this interesting. He didn't have too many positive things to say about the Godzilla films. Actually, he found them, quote, contrived in this interview, and believed that Ishiro Honda was too modest for a director. I'm like, okay, Yuasa. I mean, sure.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I can't speak to Ishiro Honda's modesty as a director, but I don't know if he should be talking about how contrived Godzilla is when he made a movie about a flying turtle who looks like a flying saucer. Like, you know, probably shouldn't be making that claim, but
he made a movie that isn't but is a ripoff of Godzilla.
Yeah. Right. So maybe it's not too surprising, but still I'm like, ooh, man, you know, you might want to bite your tongue there a little bit, Yuasa. But I get like maybe he's trying to like distance Gammera from Godzilla a little bit. I understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to his credit, by the mid 60s, the Godzilla series, one could argue are contrived.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I can't help but compare this the first Gamera movie to the first Godzilla movie, and those two are in different leagues, I would say. But yeah, by the 60s, the Godzilla movies, yeah, maybe there's not as much of a separation between those and Gamera as the first Godzilla movie.
Yeah. Ooh, hot takes here on Camp Kaiju. The special effects of Gammera are by Yonesaburo Tsukiji.
He doesn't seem to have a lot of credits in his filmography, so yeah, maybe not super into the kaiju films, it seems. Or at least he didn't have a lot of experience in them, you know?
Yeah. Who was the producer behind this?
Yeah, so the producer of Gamera was Masaichi Nagata, who was the president of Daiei Studios from 1947 through 1971. He was instrumental in the studio's creation, which, if you don't know Daiei Studios, responsible for many Japanese classics from the mid-20th century. Some of those movies include Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon from 1950, which I think deserves its reputation as one of the most influential films of all time. Not my personal favorite Kurosawa, but really an incredible movie. Daiei also produced Gate of Hell from 1953 by Tenosuke Kinugasa. This was the first Japanese color film to be shown abroad. It made a huge reputation internationally. It won an honorary Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film, as well as the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. My personal favorites on this list, Daiei Studios released a lot of films by Kenji Mizoguchi, who is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Two of the films that he made for Daiei Studios were Ugetsu and Sancho the Bailiff. Really amazing movies, long takes, kind of a poetic, beautiful style. Pretty deep, heavy dramas, so like not always the most, lightweight movies, but just like among the best movies ever made. So Daiei Studios, really a lot of masterpieces throughout the years that they released. Maybe on the other end of the spectrum, all good movies in their own right. But Daiei also distributed the 1952 Japanese re-release of King Kong and 1953's The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which we recently talked about on the podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, a wide gamut of movies of different quality levels, or at least different categories. Both kinds of films good in their own way, I would say.
Yeah, and as we know, it was that re-release of King Kong and the distribution of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms that in part inspired Toho to come up with their own giant monster, because those two previous movies were so successful at the box office. And watching Gammera, I picked up on another kaiju movie that Yuasa's film was riffing on, other than Godzilla. Imagine a giant reptile in the Arctic being woken up by atomic bombs, and then it destroys a lighthouse.
Man, I feel like I should know this. It's not The Thing, is it? The Thing.
No,
from
you just mentioned it. It's The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was too easy. Yeah, I got you. Yep. It makes sense.
But I wouldn't have picked up on that if we hadn't just watched The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you meant a different one that wasn't on the list here. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the opening in the Arctic, even like the appearance of the monster almost feels like verbatim, very, very similar between The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and Gammera. So yeah, totally. A lot of influence there for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't think I said that very well to you, but yeah, I was like, oh, this is clearly The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. You made a good point, though, that the re-release of King Kong and The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms influenced Toho to make Godzilla, and then Daiei kind of in turn is like paying homage to Toho Studios a little bit. So it's like kind of reciprocal in a way,
Yeah, it's just, genre cinema just builds off of the successes of before, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think Gammera does its own thing enough, clearly, to make it stand out. It's not a total, uninspired imagining of Godzilla.
Yeah, I agree for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just mention Daiei Studios went bankrupt in 1971, a time when the Japanese film industry faced severe losses of audiences across the board, which is a common theme when we start getting into later Godzilla films. When you wonder why they get so bad so quickly, It's because there was no money. No studio had money in the 70s.
That's sad, man. Sad, but not surprising.
Yeah.
I wish I knew a little bit more about this history, but like Gammera was a very popular series, right? Like the first couple movies did pretty well for Daiei, I thought. But like aside from that, the studio was not doing well, from my understanding.
Yeah, the Gammera series is the only thing keeping Daiei afloat by the late 60s and 70s. But you see this diminishing loss of budget with each subsequent Gammera film until by the end, I mean, we will talk about these movies, Matt, but there's like Gammera versus Zigra, which is, I hate to say it because I love Gammera so much, but it's one of the most boring movies I've ever seen, starring giant monsters.
Yeah, that's sad. It seems like it would be impossible for them to be boring, but as we know, it can happen sometimes.
Yeah. You talk about 1 out of 5 stars, but we'll talk about them one day.
Do you know, like, so the later Gammera movies, like from the Heisei era, right, from the 90s, is that Heisei? I think it is.
Yeah.
Did Toho like get the rights to Gammera then, or was that a different studio? Do you know that?
I believe that was still Daiei. However, they did not have the resources to distribute the movies, and I could be mistaken on the details, but Toho did distribute those movies at the very least.
Gotcha.
And Toho did share artisans and artists on the creative process as well, so there was some overlap. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's interesting.
No, but Toho is never. There have been some talks in the late 90s and 2000s of actually putting Godzilla and Gammera in the same movie, but they're two different properties from two different studios. So it would have taken a lot of work, and it just kind of fell through. But that's the matchup I think we would all love to see.
That would be amazing. I would love to see Gauss in a Godzilla movie too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Gammera versus King Ghidorah.
Oh, wow. Yes, please.
Yeah.
Make that happen somehow. I'm calling on you, Vincent, to make this happen. You can do it.
No, call on the listeners. Grassroots campaign.
All of us together can make it happen.
Amazing. All right. So in the movie, we have first and foremost Eiji Funakoshi playing Dr. Hidaka. He's a scientist doing research in the Arctic and later wishing to learn more about Gammera. Funakoshi was a noted Japanese actor at the time, and he later starred in the 4th entry of the series, Gammera vs. Giron, from 1969.
The film also stars Michiko Sugata as Nobuyo Sakurai, a young woman living with her father and kid brother Toshio.
Yeah, and then Harumi Kintachi as Kyoko Yamamoto is Dr. Hidaka's assistant and maybe romantic interest of Aoyagi. So Harumi Kiritachi is the female love interest of the movie. She plays Dr. Hidaka's assistant. Yeah.
Nope. The goddess of good luck, according to Aoyagi, who is played by Junichiro Yamashita. Aoyagi is a journalist tagging along with Dr. Hidaka, and Vincent, like you just said, seems to have a romantic interest in Kyoko. It does seem to be a very innocent and kind of, in my opinion, like I said before, kind of a playground romantic interest in Kyoko.
Definitely. And then the real star of this film is Yoshiro Uchida. He plays the little boy Toshio Sakurai. And this kid is deeply attached to his pet turtle named Pee-wee. At least that's the American translation of his turtle's name. But Toshio is so attached to his little Pee-wee that came out wrong. But I
hope he's attached to it. Sorry.
Sometimes I just say things and, we do with it what we can. But his father and sister are really pressuring Toshio to release Pee-wee into the wild.
Yeah, yep. Toshio, he loves his turtle. He seems to love science, which kind of is one of the charming themes of the movie as it goes on. This kid, like, just he keeps on showing up in the most dangerous situations possible. If there's like a train heading right for Gammera that's about to blow up, that kid is gonna hop on that train. You know it. He's gonna be there. It's ridiculous, but it's very funny.
Toshio is going to climb a lighthouse right when the giant monster is going to destroy it. Because of course he is.
Yeah. He's just up to all kinds of hijinks, this kid.
Now here's Toshio's motivation. He believes, I believe he believes, that Gammera is Pee-wee. Like, he releases Pee-wee, the turtle disappears, and then the next turtle Toshio sees is Gammera. And mind you, Toshio is not like 2 years old. He's like a 10-year-old boy who should know better. But he instantly views this city-destroying, people-stomping monster as his pet, who can do no wrong.
Yeah. And to like all the soldiers who are like bombarding Gammera with like, electricity and nuclear radiation and like all these weapons. And Toshio is just like, stop shooting him. He's not so bad. He's not mean. He like means well.
Toshio, he's literally Gammera's killed hundreds of people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, one time when Toshio says that, it's like right after we see Gammera kill a bunch of people with like a death ray and like light them on fire. It's like, oh, kid, he's not as great as you think he is, but I guess I understand it. It's very funny.
Yeah. More to say about that at the end of our podcast here. But that's Toshio and kind of the synopsis of the movie in a nutshell.
Yeah, indeed. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. All right. The production history of this here film. We talked about it a little bit, but after the success of Toho's Godzilla series, and actually Hitchcock's The Birds was also a recent hit. All right. Let me back up. Okay. So let me put this a different way. Gammera was not the first monster movie that Daiei attempted. They had a failed movie about giant rats called Giant Horde Beast Nezura in 1964. This movie was directed by Yuasa, but this movie did not finish production. It was canceled by the health department because the live rats were wild, uncooperative, and infested with fleas.
I love that story.
It's insane. And you know what I love even more? There's a biopic from 2020, a Japanese film called Nezura 1964, that apparently dramatizes this whole shambles of a production. And I can't wait to watch it.
Same. I had never heard about that movie before, but yeah, from your notes and then doing a little more research about it, it sounds fascinating. I can't wait to see this movie.
Yeah, I guess it's on Tubi. I just Googled Nezura 1964. So it's out there, and the trailer's on YouTube. Yeah, it's not as obscure as I thought. So I'm definitely going to watch that at some point.
For sure. Yeah.
So anyways.
Daiei could have like unleashed the next bubonic plague if their production hadn't been shut down. That's crazy.
So they got rid of the rats, but they kept the sets, like and all the miniature cityscapes. So they repurposed those for Gammera. And the idea for a giant turtle came from producer president Nagata, who, anecdotally at least, got the idea for Gammera while on a plane. And he imagined a giant turtle flying alongside. He also allegedly saw like a turtle-shaped cloud, and that fed into this imagination that eventually became what we see now.
I also read that one of the early titles for that production was A Lowly Tortoise Flies Through the Sky, which I love. That's a great title. I just wanted to point that out.
No, it's so on the nose that it's poetic.
Yeah. Sounds like kind of a bittersweet movie.
Yeah. Speaking of titles, Gammera, so I guess the Japanese name for turtle is Gammera, but they changed the K to a G because camera, like the English word camera also is the Japanese word. So they didn't want to confuse audiences. So they changed it to Gammera. And that's how you got that name.
All right, so one of the ways that Yuasa wanted to distinguish Gammera from the Godzilla movies was by making Gammera a little bit more of an animal as opposed to the anthropomorphized beast that we see in the Godzilla movies. And some of the ways that Yuasa did this in the Gammera movies was the depiction of violence, and in later films, blood, as well as Yuasa shooting the monsters from the waist up, or on all fours, as much as he could to emphasize their kind of animal aspects. I think a good example of that is when the turtle Gammera is like on its back and you think that it's kind of screwed and like its head and like all of its limbs like pull back into its shell. But then of course Gammera kind of like starts spinning around in a circle to fly up into the air. I thought that was a cool example of like a monster that seems to be basically a giant animal, but then we see this like cool new superpower that, you know, we totally weren't expecting. I thought that was a cool moment.
I think that's one of the best best moments in the movie. Just an iconic moment because nobody's expecting it. The characters aren't expecting it. I wasn't even expecting it. I mean, I know Gammera flies like that, but I would have loved to have been in the theater in 1965 and just like, what? The turtle has rockets that come out of his leg holes. This is wild.
Yeah, such a great scene. I love that part.
And then, so at Daiei, they had two tiers of films. They had A budgeted pictures and B level movies. Gammera was budgeted as a B picture, which is why you see this film in black and white. The film obviously repurposed sets from Nezura, but Gammera, the production also struggled with outdated equipment. Props broke, like the flying Gammera we just said would actually burn through its wires with those pyrotechnics. And here's something fun. When ice was trucked in for the Arctic scenes, it melted, of course, and flooded the set for 3 days. Yuasa faced stiff criticism, not just from the executives, but also from his crew. And I am thinking, here is this young director who's already helmed a failed production in giant horde beast Nezura, and now here he is with another sinking ship. I'm surprised he wasn't fired, but maybe they just couldn't afford to fire him. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but I think like despite all the struggles and challenges, like the movie looks really good. I love the black and white cinematography. I think the special effects and the suits and everything, the model work all looks pretty great. So, hats off to Yuasa. I think he did a good job in the end, especially when faced with so many challenges.
I agree. I would never have guessed all these struggles based on the finished product. I think like the camera work is really dynamic in this movie. The action is really compelling. The human characters I think are serviceable, but that's all you need in a movie like this. As long as they're not distractingly bad.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah. Yeah, Toshio is definitely distracting, but not distractingly bad, I wouldn't say. Yeah, so I agree with all that for sure. I read, I don't know if you saw this as well, but like I read that when they were making the film, Yuasa was maybe going to enlist the help of Eiji Tsuburaya, who did the special effects for a lot of the Godzilla films that Toho released. So Yuasa was going to seek out the help of Tsuburaya, but sort of as a matter of pride, like wanted to do it all himself, wanted to stick with the resources that Daiei Studios already had. I thought that was really fascinating. I don't know if you read that or like what you took away from that, like why you thought that he made that decision.
I did come across that. Well, now I'm thinking, he didn't have like the highest praise for Ishiro Honda. So maybe he, not that he didn't respect Honda or Tsuburaya, but maybe he had a little too much pride to work with a competing studio.
Yeah, that was my takeaway as well. And, in a way, I kind of admire that. He's a young director trying to make his mark, and I think he did so on this movie.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just as good as any of those any of those Godzilla movies being released at the same time. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, which I think is like 62, 63, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Early 60s. So I would say maybe that one is a slightly higher level. But yeah, overall, I would agree with you for sure.
Yeah. Listeners, if you have a different take, let us know. I just felt like the cry of 100,000 souls yelling, "No, Godzilla's always better."
Yeah. We'd love to hear that for sure. I'm sure, yeah, some people have strong opinions out there, and I would love to hear them.
Well, this movie, Gamera Giant Monster, was released in Japan in November 1967. It was popular. A sequel was put into production, Gamera versus Barugon, which was then elevated to an A-picture level. So that was in color. From here on out, Daiei made a Gamera movie every year until 1970. I painted myself into a corner. But they made a Gamera movie every year until about 1971 or 72. These are all in color. And the success of Gamera ushered in kind of a second wave of kaiju films. So if you think of Godzilla in 54, that was like the first big wave. But by 65, the genre was kind of waning with audiences. Gamera proves otherwise. And then you had other studios jumping on the bandwagon. Two prominent examples from the studio Nikatsu. They released Gappa, the Triphibian Monster, in 1967. And Shochiku, the studio, released The X from Outer Space, also in 1967. So Gamera is really kind of to thank for these films. And then, Matt, I'd love to hear your take on the history when Gamera comes to the West. What happens?
Yeah, yep. So, for better or worse, American distribution rights were acquired by Harris Associates Inc. and World Enterprises Corporation, two very forgettable studio names. They kind of re-edited it. They added a lot of newly shot scenes featuring new American characters speaking English for the most part, as well as other footage that was like recut. The whole film was kind of re-edited to some extent. So that version of the film was released in the United States as Gammera the Invincible in 1966. And Vincent, I just wanted to make sure, I think the Japanese version was released in 65, right? It says 67 on here, but I think it was 65.
It was 65. Thank you for correcting that.
I just wanted to make sure, because, yeah, the American one was then released a year later. Gammera has two M's in the American title, Gammera the Invincible. The U.S. distributors wanted to kind of, I guess, like Daiei, they wanted to like not confuse the title with the word camera, so they added another M to it. And yeah, they tried to create a more American perspective. I don't know if they really succeeded with that. To me, they added a lot of boring scenes of like generals and scientists like debating things in boardrooms, and that's like really like the extent of what they did. And they kind of, so there's, well, I don't know if I should get into this right now. I'll just say at this point that they took out a lot of the things that I think make the original Japanese version so imaginative and striking and unique. The American version kind of did away with a lot of that stuff. So anyway, I'm getting off topic a little bit. I'm allowing my personal opinion to interfere with the conversation. I apologize, but yeah. So the American version came out in 67. I think it was the only Gammera film that was released theatrically in the United States was Gammera the Invincible, for better or worse.
Yeah, that's what I read too. But hey, what are we doing here if not giving our personal takes? I with the American cut, Gammera the Invincible, I was also watching it, and I just noted a positive and a negative. My positive is that the American actors, as boring as the scenes themselves are written, the American actors are better actors than the Americans in the original Japanese release. So
that is
what it's worth.
Yeah, that's true. I do agree with that. Although also I think, in my campy category later on probably will be those American actors from the original Japanese version, because as like they're not great, but like they have some like really amusing stilted line readings, and they're very, very funny unintentionally. And I would kind of rather have that than these like bland American actors just like droning on and on for like minutes on end. So I agree with you, but I also still would kind of prefer the American characters from the original version, even if the actors are not quite as good.
I also agree with that because these inserted scenes just kill the momentum. By the time we got to Toshio, I was thinking, where is Toshio? We have just spent so much dead time in boardrooms. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot that like this movie does have action and it does have humor. And then we finally got to those scenes. I was like, wow, this took a long time.
Yeah, way too long. The Japanese version just moves so much more quickly. It's really atmospheric, it's entertaining, and the American one is just boring. Yeah, and like so now I am going to pop off a little bit. I apologize, but like I noticed a couple examples of like really striking shots and scenes from the Japanese version. Like when Toshio is calling after Pee-wee. In the Japanese version, there are like 3 shots in like really quick succession that show Yoshio from different camera angles. The American version totally cuts that part out. There's also a really great overhead shot in the Japanese version of like some Japanese scientists like going into a boardroom. I think that entire scene is cut out of the American version. There's like an introductory scene between, I forget her name, the love interest in the film.
The goddess of good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Kyoko, that's her name. There's like an introductory scene where she is talking to, oh no, I'm sorry. So it's Sakurai, Toshio's sister. There's an introductory scene with Sakurai talking to like a teacher in the village, Toshio's teacher, and like it adds a level of depth to Sakurai that's like totally missing from the American version. Those were just like the main examples that I noticed of like the American recut or re-release, like cutting all the interesting stuff out of the Japanese version. It's very unfortunate.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm talking about. Like there is like that overhead shot and there like those the 3 quick shots you mentioned. Like there's competence behind this camera compared to the American inserts where there seemed to be no interest in compelling filmmaking. It was just like point the camera and shoot.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's very unfortunate. And yeah, I'm again it's I feel like I'm talking at length about this because like the Japanese version I really like a lot and the American version is terrible. I feel strongly about this, but I'll stop for now. Sorry.
All right. Well, folks, if you had any reservations about the American release, you were correct. You should have all the reservations.
Indeed.
All right. Well, Camp Kaiju is sponsored by, let's go ahead and get to our break here before we talk more about Gammera. So Camp Kaiju is sponsored by Zach Linder and the Zach Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty, your source for real estate, home rehab, fixing and flipping for investor clients and residential buyers. Reach out to the Zach Pack today for real estate services. Follow the Zach Pack on social media and contact the Zach Pack for investment opportunities. Links in the show notes, along with some of these other references that we're talking about here tonight, that interview with Yuasa and other sources. So, for Mina's mailbox, I have one comment I'd like to read. It comes from Kevin. Kevin on Spotify commented on our Dracula's Daughter episode, which I just want to shout out because we had a lot of great feedback from that episode with Naomi Osborne guesting on that. And Kevin says, love the podcast. Glad to see a thoughtful, entertaining, and informative look into the monsters we all love. Thanks. Wow. Well, thank you, Kevin. Honestly.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. That's great. That's great to hear.
That's all I'll say for tonight. Listeners out there, please write in on Spotify or Instagram or campkaiju@gmail.com or leave a voicemail. And we would love to share your feedback on the show.
Absolutely. Vincent, how's Peter Lorre doing these days?
Last I heard, he watched a terribly boring movie called Black Dragons. But, I'll let Mr. Lorre talk about that. He did so in our last episode. This week, he's talking about a movie with another great title, but I don't know how it's going to turn out. It's called The Corpse Vanishes from 1942.
Ooh, that is a great title.
Yeah. Where did it go?
Yeah. Good question. Hopefully Peter can tell us.
I hope it's, and of course Bela Lugosi's in this movie. He's in all of these Poverty Row films, but I hope it's just Bela Lugosi around a haunted house yelling, "Where did it go?"
It'd be sort of like an art movie from Poverty Row, you know, like this Bela Lugosi in one room for an hour and a half. Actually, it would probably be like 58 minutes knowing these Poverty Row movies.
Oh yeah, at max, yeah.
Yeah,
but Peter's good, you know. He's doing things in his room that, you know, I hope he's doing okay. There's glowing radiation coming from his room. I could see it right now behind you.
Whoa.
Down the hallway. Yeah, radiation. There's the smell of lilacs.
Maybe he's going to turn into Gammera. He's unleashed from the Arctic ice.
That would take a turn.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, hey, we're riffing here. So, you know.
Poor Peter, man.
Keep the fish heads a-coming.
Yeah. They're going to start mutating, though, with all that radiation coming out of there. Start flopping around on their own.
All right. Well, on that note, welcome to Poverty Row Studios on the other side of Hollywood, where the stars were dimmer and the red carpets dripped with blood. Together we will watch the best of the worst. Movies known for their limited budgets, outlandish concepts, and questionable performances, but with enough haunted houses, zombies, ape men, and devil bats to keep you up at night. I am your host, Peter Lorre. You may remember me from such films as The Beast with 5 Fingers and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. This week, I am bringing to you a wonderfully campy picture called The Corpse Vanishes. Where did it go? You will have to see for yourself. But rest assured, this movie delivers the goods. My blood-sucking contemporary, Bela Lugosi, bedevils a wisecracking reporter who is investigating a rash of murders involving would-be brides on their wedding days. The common clue linking the deaths is a dubious orchid that we come to understand was grown by Lugosi's mad horticulturist character. But it is not just the chemical compositions of flowers he is meddling with, but also his ancient wife, whose youthful complexion is rejuvenated with the blood of the murdered brides. The film is altogether diabolical, and yet it does not know just how silly it is all presented. The Corpse Vanishes was produced by Monogram Pictures in 1942. It co-stars Elizabeth Russell as Lugosi's wife, desperate for the anti-aging serum. Now, Russell had a reputation in the 40s for playing strong characters with nefarious intent. Her brief appearance in Val Lewton's Cat People, for instance, remains a highlight of that film. Now, The Corpse Vanishes is no Cat People, but it remains worth your time if only to witness a mystery that leaves characters and audiences alike in stitches. Yes, my lovely lilac. Of course, the real star of The Corpse Vanishes is the orchid. I did not mean to presume otherwise. Hey, whoa, hey now. When did you grow such fangs? Here, have a fish head. Yikes, listeners, this lilac is certainly testing its limits. If you'll excuse me, it is feeding time now, and I have learned that
at this hour in the moonlight, my not so little lilac tends to have a mind of its own. But I will return next time with a picture called Mad Monster. Back, lilac, back, get back, yeah.
I am your master. I have transformed you into a giant of great strength, and you must obey me.
This innocent-looking greenhouse is the secret workshop of Dr. Decker. These unusual foliages are insectivorous and carnivorous, man-devouring plants, and contain a rare chemical of growth of as yet unknown powers. Konga, towering, terrorizing threat to civilization. Konga, ever-growing man-made beast of immeasurable strength.
Let me go! Please let me go!
I said let me down! Help!
Fantastic. There's a huge monster gorilla that's constantly growing to outlandish proportions, loose in the streets.
Let's get into the themes here of Gammera, the giant monster. I wrote down a few, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What jumps out at you?
Well, yeah, maybe I'll start with like the coming of age element of Gammera, the giant monster. I think what sets Gammera apart from Godzilla is this element, this kind of like childlike wonder provided mostly by Toshio. I think it's very charming to see this child character who loves his pet turtle, and then Vincent, like you said before, he thinks that Gammera is his pet turtle grown to like gargantuan proportions. I kind of like made fun of this character before, and it is ridiculous that he just like does whatever he wants, and all these like military commanders are like, "Oh, Toshio, you can do whatever you want. We'll protect you." It's ridiculous, but it is charming at the same time, and I think Gammera, friend of all children, right, is like what the monster eventually became known as. And so it's kind of like a softer, family-friendly version of Godzilla to some extent. And I think the ending of the film where Toshio is like, oh, I'm not lonely that Gammera was trapped in a rocket and then flown up to Mars. Because Toshio was like, oh, I'll just become a scientist someday and then go up and visit him. And it's like, you know, it's silly and campy and all that stuff, but it is really charming. And I think it's like an optimistic worldview that, like, you know, if we have great young kids like Toshio who loves animals, loves science, and like wants to like protect creatures, then maybe we'll be okay. I think that's like a touching theme, and I think it does set it apart from the Godzilla movies.
Yeah, I love that you're touching on themes of unity and nature. I picked up on, you know, obviously there's like a deep sense of international unity in this movie. There's like a United Nations-esque organization that is trying to bring the world together to defeat Gammera. And I think that's a common theme in the 1960s post-war strive for this sort of utopia of world peace, which unfortunately, I think in today's world, we are farther away from that than ever. So it's nice. It's inspiring, actually, to go back to a decade where these themes were taken seriously in otherwise popcorn flicks. And it's not treated sentimentally or like naively. It's like, no, this is the way our world is working. We have international unity. This is going to work, everybody. Let's go. And I don't know. It's just, I wish we can go back to that.
Yeah. I know what you mean. And like the context in like the 1960s was like the Cold War was going on. So even though there's this theme of international unity, I think there was like the threat of nuclear war like behind that the whole time, you know? So, and I think that just makes it more powerful that like we need to protect the entire planet and like not start a nuclear war for no reason, you know? And yeah, like I think the movie's themes, you know, you have like Soviet, Japanese, and American scientists and militaries working together to solve this crisis. It's kind of an idealistic view of what, you know, global humanity could and should be. And that's actually something that's like more powerful in the Japanese version than the American version. I think in the American edit, they kind of take out some of the references to like, oh, we should like ally with the Soviets for like a greater good. Like they cut some of that out of the American stuff. And I guess I kind of, you know, historically that's not surprising, but it is unfortunate. One of many things that makes the Japanese cut better, but totally agree with you, Vincent, that like the optimistic view of different nations working together in this movie, it would be nice if that's how things actually went, but I don't know. It's hard to believe sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Same with like the ecological message of this movie, which didn't really come into play, I found, until maybe towards the end when Gammera is on his full rampage. And Gammera's presence in like Tokyo Bay causes flooding and it causes fish to die. And there's just that kind of warning of this is what our humanity's meddling in the atomic age has these unforeseen detrimental forces on our planet. But then Gammera, Gammera serves as a warning, like a bellwether of like, don't do this. So I appreciate that. It's not lost on me that a lot of the themes we're talking about here are also present in Godzilla movies, but I don't want that to take away from Gammera's effect either. I feel bad. I'm like, sorry, Gammera, we can't not talk about Godzilla in your movie.
It's impossible, yeah. And, you know, I'm a little bit ambivalent because, like, the themes, I mean, it's exactly what you just said. Gammera's themes of, you know, atomic weaponry and, like, protecting the environment, totally ripped off from Godzilla. Like, it's hard to look past that, but also, like, Gammera is its own beast. I think, like, formally, you know, visually, and with some of the special effects and stuff like that, it definitely is radically different than Godzilla. So they're distinct, but like to a certain extent, there is some of that like rip-off element, and that, you know, not to get too far ahead of myself, that makes it hard to really truly love Gammera for me, but still extremely important themes. And if you're going to regurgitate that message, it's a good one to, you know, it's a good one to like repeat. I mean, audiences should probably hear that, you know?
Yeah, right. Couldn't have said it better myself. So I think those are the strongest themes for me. I love the coming of age aspect that you talked about, because I think that is what truly makes Gammera unique as a property. Well, here's our breakdown, everybody. The good, the bad, and the downright campy. I was taking notes, fast and furious in my viewing here. But, you know, I'll try to keep it relatively concise. The good for me, there's a lot I like about this movie. I think the pacing of this film, and I'm speaking about the Japanese cut, is fast and furious. I mean, Gammera's entrance is dramatic, and from there it doesn't let up. I mean, some of the set pieces, it's like I was laughing because it's like Gammera or Yuasa just doesn't give a rip. That's what I wrote. There's an airport sequence where Gammera's flying around the tower.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the people in the tower are like, whoa, that was a close one. Whoa, that was a close one. And then boom. Gammera annihilates them with no mercy.
I love that scene so much. And meanwhile, Toshio was like, he's not so bad. Don't hurt him. I love that.
Oh my God. It was amazing.
I love it.
Gammera shows no mercy in this movie. He's a Swiss Army knife of weaponry, and he breathes fire. He can fly with his rocket boosters. he's got this like really fearsome set of jaws. Is just a really unique kaiju and used to full effect. I think Toshio's story at its best is touching, if a little overly sentimental. And back to that fire, because that's what I'm really into with this movie. It looks so good in the black and white. The cinematography here is used to full effect. And yeah, that's where I'll leave my good notes.
I think that's a good segue to my good category, because visually, I think this movie is really striking. I love the cinematography in this movie. It's in kind of like stark black and white, high contrast, very dark blacks and like very bright whites and like, a lot of shades of gray in between. And like, even though the original Godzilla is also in black and white, I still think Gammera looks very, very different. It's like really shadowy. It's kind of weird to me that like, the story is pretty sentimental with the Toshio character, but like the visual style actually is pretty dark and grim and like sort of like menacing and scary sometimes. There are several scenes that I think look amazing, like when Gammera first crawls out of the ice towards the beginning. I think it looks fantastic. There's all this like fake ice and snow flying everywhere, and it's just very, very beautiful. I think the lighthouse attack scene is really, really great.
Yeah.
And the part where like Gammera kind of like peeks over the cliff at Toshio for the first time. It kind of reminded me of the movie Them, when like the first giant ant appears to the audience, like crawling over the sand dune. Both really great scenes, I would say.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like the special effects, I kind of alluded to this before, but they look really great in this movie, especially considering all the challenges that Yuasa and the crew did have in making it. I think the Gammera suit looks pretty good. I think like the animation when Gammera is like flying through the night sky and like the airport example that you used is probably the best one, but there are a lot of other striking scenes of like, Gammera and this kind of like trail of fire, like hovering over these mountains and like city skylines and stuff. All that looks fantastic. So yeah, there are just too many examples to list, but I think overall it's a beautifully shot movie. And I think it really conveys a sense of like suspense and horror, even though again, like the story's pretty silly and the characters are like, not not very deep or like dark or anything like that. But the visual style is just very, very compelling and very well done on a small budget, I would say.
Definitely. And great talking about the visual effects, because I don't find them cheap looking at all. I mean, there's use of a lot of rear projection. I think I'm using this jargon correctly, but and a lot of like composite shots where like Gammera will be in the background towering over little humans running in the foreground. And I'm like, these are blended really well. It's totally. like in the Arctic when the ship is stuck in the ice and Gammera is lumbering towards the ship. That's an instance where little people in the foreground, Gammera in the background, the scale, the ratio is perfect. Everything is like a wide shot. I'm like, this is a really awesome use of, I don't know, of special effect filmmaking.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more example that I would cite is like the attack on Tokyo towards the end. Like that entire scene is really great, I think. And there's one shot where Gammera is attacking like a skyscraper, and you see like the shadows of people going through like a lighted window, like just the silhouettes kind of like frantically leaving the building. But it's all like model work. So I think that must have just been like little cutouts of people that they like flash in front of the windows. And it's like a split-second shot, but it's so convincing. It's really great. I love that moment.
Yes. And that made me think about a really harrowing scene. Gammera is attacking, he knocks over a building or something. He breathes fire on a group of people and they're roasted. And I'm just thinking about the atomic bombings of real Japanese people. And I'm like, this got real dark real quick.
Yeah, for sure. And like in that scene, like when the people are roasted, then the image suddenly becomes like, it's like a negative image, where like what was black and white, then suddenly like those shades flip. So then like the dark colors become light and the light colors become dark. I think probably everybody out there knows what like a negative image is, but it's used really well in that scene. And it adds to that like horrific element for sure.
Yeah, because you just know, and you're reminded of all these other historical images. Yeah, this movie, this is a horror movie, straight up. It's not, it's not like later incarnations of Gammera. Whatever Toshio says, this monster is not a friend of children.
Right. Yeah. It's funny to have those two sentiments side by side, but like visually it is like a very frightening movie at times. Like not, it's like it might not actually scare you, but like the images are like pretty intense.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of the bad, I actually don't have a lot because here's the thing, like anything I could easily critique, I just take it for what it is. Like nothing's like really distracting to me. Sure, the special effects you could say, yeah, I could see the strings on the airplanes, but like that's what I watch these for in a way. So
yeah,
I'm not gonna pick those low hanging fruit, but I will talk about Toshio because I think on one hand his character is very campy, but by the end, I think it just gets distractingly bad. His motivations or lack thereof, because I think this kid is delusional, honestly. Like, I don't see any reason why the military is letting him, first of all, inside these perimeters and these dangerous situations. Because the point, like, he's there every time. I'm like, is nobody watching this kid? This kid would be on, like, the government's radar at this point because he's so good at getting into hazardous, off-limit, prohibited, sections of places. So it was a little unbelievable for me. And and I'm like, Toshio, you need help because you're delusional, honestly, and you're gonna get yourself killed.
Right. Yeah. It's like realistically, he like the first time he saw Gammera, he would have been dead within like 10 seconds, and like he's he's an annoying character for sure. And like towards the end, when he keeps on popping up in these dangerous situations, I'm like, what a brat! Like where's his big sister? Like is she not supposed to be watching him right now, or his dad for that matter?
Yeah, and where's his mom? See, I think if this movie wanted to explore that family unit, that could really enrich the film dramatically, which I think there's room for it. However, obviously that's not what Daiei was going for, but I could see a version where we get the sense of a broken home life for Toshio.
Yeah, I think there's a brief line of dialogue towards the beginning where his dad says that Toshio's mom died a while ago, but I don't think they say exactly why. Like, I don't know if it was in World War II. I don't think that's ever really explained, but I don't think she's in the picture anymore. So to your point, like they could have elaborated on that a little bit more.
Yeah. But that's the, the long and short of it for me with the bad category.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to pretend that Gammera the Invincible doesn't exist, like for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to talk about that at all. Don't watch the American version. I'll just say that one more time. But with the Japanese version, Gammera the Giant Monster, I would agree that the Toshio character is like amusing, but also pretty annoying, and like, just stretches believability. And I know you could argue like this movie's not supposed to be believable, but like there should be, the military would not allow this kid to do this over and over again. So, I'm repeating what you said, Vincent. That is a hindrance for me for sure. And I guess I'll just kind of. I also mentioned this briefly earlier, but like for me, I think my favorite kaiju movie will always be the 1954 Godzilla because it was just so original. It blended like political commentary and this kind of like fantastic sci-fi storyline like it had never been done before. And Gammera has a lot of strengths, but it's a cash grab. I think it's trying to like capitalize on Godzilla's success. Not to mention the birds and Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and all those other movies. And the lack of originality does knock it down a little bit in my estimation, but again, there's still enough distinct and charming, imaginative stuff in this movie to compensate for that, in my opinion.
I'm really interested in where we'll land with our final ratings.
Yeah, me too.
For the campy, this movie's full of them, but we talked about Pee-wee, which is just so silly.
Yeah.
I love that they shoot Gammera into space and to Mars. It's just such like it's Plan Z. Plan Z is very campy, and it's very indicative of the space age of this movie. But yeah, just like that's it. We're just gonna lure him into our rocket and shoot him off into space to Mars, no less. It's just such like writers at a table thinking, well, I got nothing else. Let's just shoot the guy to space.
Yeah. How are we going to wrap this thing up now?
Yeah.
And it's funny because they make such a big deal out of Plan Z. Like they mention it over and over again, but they don't explain exactly what it is. And then like you finally find out at the very end of the movie. And it's like you just said, like, oh, that's it. And they're just going to like trap him in a rocket and shoot him into outer space. All right.
Yeah.
A little anticlimactic at that point.
There's one more. It was just like a line that made me laugh where Dr. Hidaka, I think it's him, they're talking about they could freeze Gammera, and Hidaka, or it might have been this other scientist, he's like, well, that's it. We could freeze him and we can in Operation Deep Freeze. And just the way he says that line, it's like he's had that line in his back pocket his whole life. And now he's like, we could call it Operation Deep Freeze.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, okay, yeah, that's a good name. I'm glad you came up with that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. His line delivery there is like very proud of himself. This is his pet project.
Deep Freeze. Been saving it for years.
It's not as good as Plan Z, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that whole scene. And Dr. Hidaka, like, even though he's supposed to be this brilliant scientist, doesn't really seem to have a good understanding of like physics or nuclear radiation or like it's, like how they're going to affect Gammera. He comes up with these like questions and ideas in that same exact scene where the other soldiers are like, oh, that will not work. Let me tell you why. And I just kept on thinking like, who is Dr. Hidaka? What is the medicine that he specializes in,
Yeah.
Because he's not very good at this particular line of work, but...
He's a great idea man.
Yeah, yeah. Operation Deep Freeze. That's his one idea. I love all that stuff. For me, I think the campy scene that I want to mention is like the Tokyo nightclub with like the kind of like surf rock band.
Yeah.
And I guess I do have to mention the American version one more time because the song that's played during the American version like actually became kind of a hit in the United States, even though the lyrics are just like insanely stupid. Like it's just like Gammera, Gammera over and over again, and that's the entire song. It's really dumb. And like in the Japanese version, there's like a similar song. It's a little bit different, but then like anyway, the police come in and they're like, Gammera's coming, everybody has to leave. And these like young hooligans in this nightclub are like, oh, this shindig's never gonna end, man. We're gonna dance the night away.
Yeah.
So they keep on dancing, and like almost immediately, Gammera just like tears the roof off of this nightclub. I really love that scene in both the Japanese. Yeah, it's so dumb, and like, and I'm saying that in like kind of a complimentary, fun way. Like, I don't know if it's supposed to be a satire of like, the youth in Tokyo and how just like backwards they are, or like irresponsible or something, but I don't know. It's a very fun tangent. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's so satisfying when like they start dancing and immediately Gammera just like presumably kills all of them. I love that moment.
Again, Toshio, Gammera is a murderous beast.
Yeah, except with children apparently.
Yeah, I mean, why he saves Toshio from the lighthouse, we'll never know.
Yeah. Friend of all children, apparently. Although you would have to assume that Gammera inadvertently kills a lot of children during his assault on Tokyo, but...
That is true.
Who knows? I guess we don't see that.
All right. Let's give this monster our final rating.
Yeah, so as always on Camp Kaiju, we have 4 ratings that we give at the end of the episode. Number 1, it's a timeless classic. It definitely stands the test of time. Number 2, there may be some antiquated moments, but overall it's great. It stands the test of time. Number 3, it may be historically significant or just fun, but it does not stand the test of time. And our lowest rating, it is not worth revisiting. It definitely does not stand the test of time.
Okay. I'm going to let you go first.
Okay.
What do you got?
Well, all right, sorry, one more time. Gammera the Invincible, the American version, gets lower than our lowest rating. It's terrible.
Oh.
It's the 5th rating. It's off the list. That's how much I dislike it. But more to the point, the Japanese version, Gammera the Giant Monster, I'm going to give it our 2nd highest rating. There may be some antiquated moments, but overall it's great. It stands the test of time. It would be nice if it was a little more original, if it wasn't such a blatant ripoff of Godzilla, but there's so much to love about it. It's very charming. It looks fantastic. The special effects work, again, is great. It launched such a popular series. I really love Gammera versus Gauss, which we've talked about on the podcast before. This is just a really hard movie to dislike. So yeah, it stands the test of time. The Japanese version is very, very fun.
Absolutely. I am going to give it the full classic, stands the test of time, despite exactly what you say. I mean, this is in some ways a carbon copy. You picture a kaiju movie, this is it. With that said, I think it's done exceptionally well and stands above many of its peers. And Gammera's design, that's what tips it into true classic status for me. His design is so memorable. It's so unique, so bonkers that you can't help but just, for me, I'm obsessed with Gammera. Whatever, subsequent movies, with how terrible they are, but this monster, I love and will never top Godzilla in my heart, but he's on the Mount Rushmore.
Absolutely. Yeah. Someday I'll have to ask you what your Mount Rushmore is. I don't know if now is the best time for it, but I love how much you love this movie, and Gammera, the character. Yeah, he's definitely very high up there for me, for sure.
Yeah. All right, man. That was Gammera, the Giant Monster, everybody. Go check it out. And when you do, let us know what you thought about it. We'd love to hear your thoughts here on Camp Kaiju. Rate and review wherever you listen. You can also share this podcast with a friend. Subscribe to the website. Send us listener comments at campkaiju@gmail.com. On Instagram, links all in the show notes. You know where to find them. If you'd like to be a featured voice on the show, leave a voicemail, 612-470-2612, telling us about your favorite monster movies and memories. Camp Kaiju is recorded in Minneapolis, St. Paul, with Mina's Mailbox music by Ben Cook Feltz. Thank you, friends, and until next time, stay campy. Camp Kaiju is sponsored by Zach Linder and the Zach Pack, powered by Coldwell Banker Realty, your source for real estate, home rehab, fixing and flipping for investor clients and residential buyers. Reach out to the Zach Pack today for real estate services. Follow the Zach Pack on social media and contact the Zach Pack for investment opportunities. Link in the show notes.
Take cover! Gammera is attacking! Come on, we've got to stop them! Take cover!
Earthquake!
No!
Oh.
No, quick! Gammera! He's coming, I tell you! Quickly! Hurry, get out of here! Quickly, move!
Don't blow your cool. We're not going anywhere.
Right.
I say we should stay here and dance!